Veltherkos had served the Galactic Council for 60 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species go to war over planets, resources, and pride. But he had never seen the council chamber filled with such fear. The Great Hall of Nexus Prime Station held representatives from 47 species. Today, most of them looked like prey animals waiting for the predator to strike. Their skin changed colors with stress. Their tentacles twitched. Their wings folded tight against their bodies. The Dracthury Dominion had broken them without even entering this room. 12 systems have fallen, announced High Speaker Morith, his voice heavy with defeat. The Dracthury fleet moved faster than our reports. By the time we learn of an attack, 3 more worlds have burned. Velther recorded everything with his neural implant. As the Council's chief historian, it was his duty to document these moments. Even the shameful ones. Perhaps especially those. "We must negotiate," said Ambassador Trell of the Vazim Collective. Her 4 arms gestured in patterns of surrender. "The Dracthury want territory. We give them territory. We save what we can." Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Velther felt sick. The Dracthury did not simply want territory. They wanted slaves. They wanted to break every species that dared to call itself civilized. But fear made cowards of them all. "There may be another option." The voice came from the back of the chamber. It was soft, but somehow cut through every whisper. Velther turned and saw 2 humans walking down the central aisle. He recognized them from intelligence files. Admiral Lisa Huang was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that missed nothing. Commander Daniel Price walked beside her, tall and broad, with the kind of calm that came from surviving things that should have killed him. The humans were not invited to this session, High Speaker Morith said sharply. "No," Admiral Huang agreed. "But we came anyway. Because while you discuss how much to surrender, the Dracthury are burning another world. And what can humans offer?" Ambassador Trell asked with barely hidden scorn. "Your species has a single colony beyond your home system. You have no great fleet. No vast armies. We have 200 soldiers," Commander Price said. The chamber erupted in bitter laughter. Velther did not laugh. He had read the classified reports about humanity. The ones that made no sense. The ones that described things that should not be possible. 200? Morith shook his head. The Dracthury have conquered worlds with millions of defenders. What can 200 humans do? Admiral Huang smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something terrible. "They can win," she said simply. "Explain," Velther found himself saying. The word left his mouth before he could stop it. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. Huang looked at the Serenari historian with something like respect. "We call them champions. Volunteers who have undergone enhancement procedures that push human biology beyond its natural limits. They are faster, stronger, and more durable than any standard soldier in the galaxy. Enhancement programs are common," Morith dismissed. "The Dracthury themselves use genetic modification. It does not make your 200 worth more than our millions. The Dracthury modify their soldiers to remove fear," Commander Price said quietly. "To make them aggressive, brutal. Our champions are different. We did not remove their humanity. We weaponized it." Velther felt cold, despite the regulated temperature of the chamber. He did not understand what that meant, but something in Price's voice told him it was important. "We are offering a counteroffensive," Admiral Huang continued. "The Dracthury have taken the Weimar system. 3 million civilians from 4 different species are held as slaves on the primary world. We intend to free them." "Impossible," Trell said. "The Dracthury have 40 warships in that system. Ground forces numbering in the hundreds of thousands." "Yes." Huang nodded. "It will be difficult. Not impossible, Velther noted. Difficult. The humans saw a clear difference between those words. The Council cannot authorize this mission, Moreth declared. We cannot waste resources on a hopeless attack. We are not asking for authorization, Wang replied. We are informing you of our intentions. If you wish to document our failure, you are welcome to send an observer. The chamber fell silent. Velther understood immediately. The humans were going regardless of what the Council decided. They would fight alone if necessary, against an enemy that had crushed every force sent against them. They were either very brave or very foolish. Possibly both. I will go, Velther said. Every Serenari in the chamber turned to stare at him. His own ambassador looked horrified. Historian Koss, Moreth said slowly. You understand this is almost certainly a one-way journey? I understand. Velther stood and gathered his recording equipment. But if these humans somehow succeed, the galaxy will need to know how. And if they fail, we should remember their courage. Admiral Hong studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once, a gesture of respect between equals. We leave in 6 hours, she said. Travel light. The council session dissolved into chaos as the humans turned and walked out. Velther followed them, ignoring the protests of his colleagues. He had spent his entire career recording the actions of others. Perhaps it was time to witness something worth recording. The human vessel waited in Docking Bay 7. It was called the Relentless Dawn, and it was smaller than Velther expected. No massive warship bristling with weapons. Just a sleek cruiser designed for speed and precision. Commander Price led him aboard. The corridors were narrow but clean. Human crew members moved with purpose, checking weapons, running diagnostics, preparing for battle. None of them looked afraid. You will have quarters near the medical bay, Price explained. Stay there during combat operations. Our people will protect you, but we cannot do our jobs if we are worrying about a civilian. Understood. Velther hesitated. Commander, may I ask you something? Of course. Why are you doing this? The Weimar system holds no strategic value for Earth. Those civilians are not your people. Why risk everything to save strangers? Daniel Price stopped walking. He turned to face the alien historian, and Velther saw something in his eyes that he could not name. It was not anger, not pride. Something older and fiercer. Because someone has to, Price said. And because we can. He continued walking, leaving Velther alone with those simple words. The Serenari historian stood in the corridor of a human warship, surrounded by beings who had volunteered to die for people they had never met. And he began to understand why the classified reports about humanity made no sense. Some things could not be explained with logic. Some things could only be witnessed through the viewport. Velther watched Nexus Prime Station grow smaller as the Relentless Dawn accelerated toward war. Around him, the human crew prepared for battle with an energy that disturbed him deeply. They were not grim. They were not fatalistic. They were eager. Admiral Huang passed by on her way to the bridge. She paused beside him and followed his gaze to the stars. Having second thoughts, historian? Many, he admitted. She laughed softly. Good. That means you are smart enough to understand what we are facing. She placed a hand briefly on his shoulder. Get some rest. You will want to be alert when we arrive. Admiral, Velther said as she turned to leave. The Council believes you will fail. Lisa Wong looked back at him with that terrible smile. The Council has never seen my champions fight. She walked away, and Velther was left alone with the stars and the growing certainty that he was about to witness something the galaxy had never seen before. He only hoped he would survive to tell the story. The journey to the Weimar system would take 3 days. Velther spent the first day in his quarters, reviewing everything the Galactic Council knew about human military capabilities. The files were incomplete. Humans shared very little about their weapons or their soldiers. What information existed came from rumors and scattered encounters. On the second day, he decided that hiding in his room would teach him nothing. He was a historian. His job was to observe and record. So he left the safety of his quarters and went looking for answers. He found them in the training bay. The room was large by human standards, but would have been considered small by any other species. Exercise equipment lined the walls. Padding covered the floor. And in the center of the room, two champions were trying to kill each other. Velther froze in the doorway. His four hearts beat in rapid sequence as he watched a man and woman exchange blows that should have shattered bones. They moved faster than his eyes could track. One moment they were standing apart. The next they were tangled together, striking and blocking and throwing each other across the room. Neither wore armor. Neither held back. After 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours, the woman swept the man's legs and pinned him to the floor with her knee on his throat. Both of them were breathing hard, covered in sweat, and smiling. "Good match, Kevin," the woman said. "You are getting faster, Amy." The man tapped the floor twice, signaling surrender. "Or I am getting old." They helped each other up and noticed Velther standing frozen in the doorway. The woman walked over, still catching her breath. Up close, she was smaller than he expected. Maybe 5.5 feet tall, with short brown hair and a friendly face. She looked like she could be someone's sister or daughter. She had just fought like a creature from a nightmare. "You must be the historian," she said, extending her hand. "Lieutenant Amy Foster." Velther took her hand carefully. Human hands were surprisingly delicate despite their strength. "I am Velther Koss. I apologize for interrupting your training." "No interruption." The large man joined them. He was easily twice Amy's size, with dark skin and a shaved head covered in old scars. His voice was unexpectedly soft and gentle. "We were just finishing up. I'm Sergeant Kevin Cole." "That was remarkable," Velther managed to say. "How long have you been training together?" 8 years, Kevin said. "Amy and I went through the program together. She's one of only 3 survivors from our candidate group." 3 survivors? How many started? 150. Velther felt his throat tighten. The enhancement process killed 147 people? "The process is hard," Amy said simply. "The human body was not designed for what we become. Most candidates cannot survive the changes. We knew the risks when we volunteered. Why would anyone volunteer for those odds?" Kevin and Amy exchanged a look that Velther could not read. Then Kevin rolled up his sleeve. His forearm was covered in small text, names written in neat rows from his wrist to his elbow. "These are the people I could not save," he said quietly. "Before I became a champion, I was a rescue worker. I pulled survivors from disasters, collapsed buildings, war zones. But sometimes I was not strong enough, not fast enough. People died because I could not reach them in time." He touched one of the names. This was a little girl trapped under concrete. I could hear her crying. I worked for 6 hours trying to lift the debris. She died 20 minutes before the heavy equipment arrived. Velther said nothing. There was nothing to say. "The Champions program offered me a chance to never feel that helpless again," Kevin continued. "I would rather die trying to become strong enough than live knowing I could not save the next person." Amy nodded. "We all have similar stories. The program does not take soldiers who want glory or power. It takes people who have something to protect, something worth dying for." "And worth killing for?" Velther added quietly. "Yes." Amy's eyes hardened just slightly. "We do not enjoy causing death, but we accept it as necessary to protect the innocent. The Dracthari have enslaved 3 million civilians. They will hurt them. They will kill them, unless someone stops them. And you believe 200 champions can stop an army?" Kevin smiled. It was a surprisingly warm expression on such a scarred face. Come, let me show you something. He led Velther to a display screen on the wall. With a few touches, he pulled up combat footage. The video showed a single champion fighting in some ruined city. Dracthury warriors surrounded her, firing weapons and charging with blades. The champion moved through them like wind through leaves. She was never where their weapons aimed. Her hands struck with precision that shattered armor and broke bones. In 30 seconds, 20 Dracthury lay dead or dying. The champion had not taken a single serious wound. This was Lieutenant Foster last year, Kevin said. A rescue operation on Thalos 4. She extracted 40 hostages from a Dracthury holding facility. Alone. Velther watched Amy on the screen, dodge a blast that should have vaporized her, then break a Dracthury warrior's neck with one hand while protecting a wounded civilian with the other. The Dracthury are the most feared warriors in the galaxy, he said slowly. But you fight them like they are children. The Dracthury are strong, Amy acknowledged. But they have been engineered to remove fear and compassion. They cannot feel love or loyalty or the need to protect others. Those feelings drive us. They make us push past limits that should be impossible. I do not understand. Kevin put his massive hand on Velther's shoulder, gentle despite its size. When you fight for yourself, you fight until the pain becomes too great, until survival instinct tells you to stop. But when you fight for someone you love, for a child who needs you, for an innocent person who will die without you, there is no limit. There is no pain too great. There is no enemy too strong. You weaponize compassion, Velther whispered, finally understanding. We weaponized everything, Amy said. Our strength, our speed, our endurance, but most importantly, our refusal to let innocent people suffer when we have the power to help them. Commander Daniel Price appeared in the doorway. He looked tired but alert. Velther had learned that the commander rarely slept during missions. We have received updated intelligence, Price announced. The Dracthury have accelerated their schedule. They are beginning mass executions of civilians on Weimar Prime, starting with the children. The change in the room was immediate. Kevin's general expression vanished, replaced by something cold and terrible. Amy's body went still in a way that reminded Velther of a predator sighting prey. How long until we arrive? Kevin asked. 18 hours. That is too long. Amy's voice was flat. They will kill thousands by then, I know. Price's jaw tightened. Admiral Huang is pushing the engines past safety limits. We will arrive as fast as physics allows. Velther watched the champions around him. Their faces had transformed. The friendly soldiers who had welcomed him moments ago were gone. In their place stood something else entirely. Not monsters. Something worse. Parents who had just learned their children were in danger. We will stop them, Kevin said quietly. It was not a boast. Not a promise. It was a simple statement of fact. Velther believed him completely, and for the first time since boarding this ship, he understood why the Dracthury should be afraid. The relentless dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Weimar system. Velther stood on the observation deck, watching the stars return to normal points of light. His neural implant recorded everything, but his biological memory would never forget what he saw next. 43. Dracthury warships hung in formation around Weimar Prime. Each one was 3 times the size of the human cruiser. Their hulls bristled with weapons designed to crack planets open like eggs. Behind them, the pale blue world held 3 million prisoners waiting to die. Admiral Lisa, Wang's voice came through the ship's communication system. All hands, battle stations. Champions, prepare for deployment. We go in hot. Velther's 4 hearts stuttered. We are attacking? Against those odds? A crew member nearby, a young woman checking her console, glanced at him with something like amusement. First time flying with humans? Yes, you will get used to it. She turned back to her work. Or you will not survive long enough to worry about it. The relentless dawn accelerated toward the enemy fleet. 2 escort ships emerged from the cruiser's hangar bay, taking flanking positions. 3 human vessels against 43 Dractari warships. The mathematics of destruction were clear. The Dractari apparently agreed. Their fleet did not even bother to change formation. They simply opened fire with a wall of energy that should have vaporized the approaching humans instantly. The relentless. Dawn Dance.vel tar could think of no other word for it. The human ship twisted and rolled through the incoming fire with movements that defied everything he knew about spacecraft. Shots that should have connected missed by meters. The smaller escort ships performed even more extreme maneuvers, spinning and diving in patterns that would have killed any pilot through sheer physical stress. Human pilots, he remembered, were enhanced too. The human ships returned fire as they flew, their weapons precise despite their wild movements. Dractari vessels began taking hits to their engines, their weapon systems, their bridges. Not killing shots, but crippling ones. They are targeting command and control, Belther realized aloud. Disabling rather than destroying. We need the Dractari fleet confused, not gone, the crew member explained. Dead ships do not call for reinforcements. Damaged ships with panicked crews do. The relentless dawn punched through the enemy formation, taking only minor damage to its shields. Behind them, the Dractari fleet erupted into chaos as captains screamed contradictory orders over damaged communication systems. Admiral Wang's voice returned. Drop pods away. Champions, you have green light. Through the observation deck windows, Belther watched dozens of small objects launch from the relentless dawn's belly. They fell toward Weimar Prime like seeds scattered by a farmer, each one containing soldiers that the galaxy's most feared warriors had never faced. I am going down with the support team, Belther announced suddenly. The crew member stared at him. Historian, that is a combat zone. I know. He was already moving toward the shuttle bay. But I cannot document this battle from space. I need to see. Commander Price met him at the shuttle. His face showed disapproval, but he did not stop Belther from boarding. Stay behind our lines, Price ordered. Do not engage any enemy. If I tell you to run, you run without question. Understood. The shuttle dropped toward the planet's surface. Through the small window, Belther watched the drop pods streak ahead of them, burning through the atmosphere like falling stars. Anti-aircraft fire rose to meet them, filling the sky with explosions and death. Most of the pods made it through. The shuttle landed at a secured position 2 miles from the main Dractari base. Belther stepped out into chaos. The air smelled of smoke and something sharp that burned his throat. In the distance, he could hear the sounds of battle. Weapons fire and explosions and screaming. This way, Price said, leading a support squad toward the front lines. They moved through ruined streets, past buildings that had been homes before the Dractari came. Belther saw bodies along the way, civilians who had been executed for reasons he could not imagine. Men, women, children. The Dractari did not discriminate in their cruelty. They found the champions near the enemy's outer defenses. Belther stopped, breathing. Sergeant Kevin Cole stood in the center of a Dractari squad, surrounded by warriors twice his size, wielding weapons that could cut through starship armor. He moved through them like they were standing still. His bare hands shattered helmets. His feet crushed chests. A Dractari blade caught his shoulder, drawing blood, and Kevin simply grabbed the blade, snapped it, and drove the broken end through its owner's eye. 10 seconds. 12 Dractari dead. Kevin had already moved on to the next group before the bodies finished falling. Nearby, Lieutenant Amy Foster demonstrated why she was considered the fastest champion in the program. Velther's eyes could not track her movements. She was simply there, and then she was somewhere else. And wherever she had been, Dracthury warriors collapsed with broken necks or crushed throats. A massive Dracthury commander charged at her, roaring a challenge that probably meant something in his culture. Amy sidestepped his attack, grabbed his arm, and used his own momentum to flip him into the air. Before he landed, she had already killed 2 more of his soldiers. Another champion, a man named Marcus Webb, took a direct hit from an energy weapon that should have burned through his chest. He staggered, looked down at the smoking hole in his armor, and then looked up at the Dracthury who had shot him. "That hurt," Marcus said. Then he charged. The Dracthury tried to run. They were not fast enough. Velther recorded everything. His hands trembled. His 4 hearts beat in patterns that indicated extreme stress. He had studied warfare for 6 decades. He had never seen anything like this. The Dracthury were not losing a battle. They were being erased. "They are retreating," Price observed, pulling back to the inner fortifications. Velther watched a Dracthury warrior flee from Amy Foster, dropping his weapon, all pretense of honor forgotten. She let him go. Her attention had already shifted to a group of civilians huddled in a collapsed building. "Help me," she called to a nearby champion. Together, they lifted concrete that should have required heavy machinery. Beneath it, 3 alien children from a species Velther did not recognize huddled together, terrified but alive. Amy knelt beside them, her voice suddenly soft. "You are safe now. No one will hurt you." One of the children reached out to touch her face. His small hand left a streak in the blood and dirt that covered her skin. "Are you a monster?" the child asked. Amy smiled. It was the gentlest expression Velther had ever seen on a killer's face. "Only to those who hurt children," she said. She picked up the smallest child and carried him with one arm. Her other hand still held the blade she had taken from a dead Dracthury. Around her, the champions pressed forward, pushing toward the enemy headquarters, killing anything that stood between them and the civilians who needed rescue. Velther understood something in that moment. Something terrible and beautiful and completely human. These soldiers were not fighting to win. They were not fighting for glory or territory or survival. They were fighting because children were suffering, and they could not allow that suffering to continue. The mathematics of this battle no longer mattered. Numbers could not measure what he was witnessing. Commander Price appeared beside him, blood on his armor, but determination in his eyes. "The enemy headquarters is 2 miles ahead," he said. "That is where they are holding the main civilian population. We push through tonight. How many champions have we lost?" Velther asked. Price's jaw tightened. 14. More wounded. 14 dead out of 200. Against an enemy force of hundreds of thousands. The casualties should have been reversed. Can we still win? Price looked toward the distant enemy fortress, where thousands of innocent people waited for rescue or death. "We will win or die trying," he said simply. There was no other option. The champions regrouped and advanced. Velther followed, recording everything, knowing that whatever happened next would change the galaxy's understanding of humanity forever. The Dracthury had conquered 100 worlds. They had never faced anything like this. The Dracthury command fortress rose from the center of the occupied city like a monument to cruelty. Its walls were thick enough to resist orbital bombardment. Its defenses had been designed to hold against armies 10 times the size of the human force. Inside, 3,000 civilians waited in holding cells, their lives measured in hours. Velther crouched behind a shattered wall, watching the champions prepare for the final assault. They had been fighting for 18 hours straight. Every one of them showed wounds. Some could barely stand. None of them talked about stopping. Kevin Cole sat nearby, cleaning a blade he had taken from a dead enemy. His left arm hung at a wrong angle, broken in at least 2 places. He had refused medical treatment until the mission was complete. "We lost Marcus," Amy said quietly, sitting down beside Kevin. Kevin's hands stopped moving. He closed his eyes for exactly 3 seconds. When he opened them, the grief was still there, but buried beneath something harder. "How?" he asked, covering a retreat. 3 civilians were pinned down. Marcus held the line until they could escape. Amy's voice was steady, but Velther could see her hands shaking. "He took 11 of them with him. Sounds like Marcus." Kevin resumed cleaning his blade. He always said he wanted to go out making a difference. A transmission crackled through the champion's communication system. The voice was Dracthery, translated through human equipment into flat, mechanical words. "Humans. This is Commander Vorax of the Dominion. You have fought well, perhaps better than any species we have faced. But you cannot breach our fortress. If you attempt to do so, we will begin executing hostages. 10 every minute until you withdraw." Commander Daniel Price listened to the threat with an expression Velther could not read. Then he responded. "Commander Vorax, this is Commander Daniel Price of Earth's Champions Division. We do not negotiate with those who threaten innocent lives. We do not withdraw. We do not stop. Then the blood of the hostages will be on your hands." "No." Price's voice carried absolute certainty. "It will be on yours. And we are coming to collect the debt." He cut the communication and turned to his champions. "Lieutenant Foster, take your infiltration team. You have the route we identified?" "Yes, sir." Amy was already gathering a small group of soldiers. "The maintenance tunnels beneath the eastern wall. The Dracthery think they are too small for assault troops. Show them they are wrong." Amy nodded and led her team into the darkness. Velther watched them go. 12 humans moving toward impossible odds, with nothing but their enhanced bodies and their refusal to fail. "The rest of us will attack the main gate," Price continued. "We make noise. We draw attention. We give Foster's team the opening they need." "Sir," Kevin said, standing despite his broken arm, "let me lead the assault." "Kevin, you are wounded. I can still fight." There was no boasting in his voice. "Just fact. And those people inside need us." Price studied his friend for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Lead the way, Sergeant." The assault on the main gate was the most brutal combat Velther had ever witnessed. The Dracthery had concentrated their remaining forces there, knowing the humans would come. Energy weapons filled the air with deadly light. Explosions shook the ground. The screams of the dying mixed with battle cries in a dozen languages. Kevin Cole led the charge through the kill zone. His broken arm did not slow him. When a Dracthery warrior cut his leg, he kept advancing on the wounded limb. When an explosion threw him to the ground, he rose and continued forward. The champions followed him. They fell around him, one after another, but the survivors pressed on. For every champion who died, 10 Dracthery fell with them. Velther found himself moving forward too, recording everything even as plasma fire scorched the air around him. He should have been terrified. Instead, he felt something he had never experienced before. A strange sense of honor at witnessing such courage. The main gate shattered under concentrated fire. The champions poured through, engaging the defenders in close combat where their advantages mattered most. Kevin Cole fought at the front, his one good arm dealing death with mechanical precision. Then a transmission came through. Amy Foster's voice, tight with pain but triumphant. "We're in. Hostage area located. But there's a problem. Report," Price ordered. "They've rigged explosives to the holding cells. Remote detonation. If we try to breach, they'll kill everyone." The fighting around the main gate paused as both sides seemed to realize what was happening. Commander Varax's voice came through the fortress speakers, echoing across the battlefield. "You see, humans? We are not fools. Your infiltration team has found our hostages, but they cannot free them without triggering the explosives. Withdraw now, or I press the button and 3,000 aliens die." Velther's heart sank. After everything, after all the sacrifice, they had lost. But Price was smiling. It was the same terrible smile Admiral Huang had worn. "Amy," he said through the communication system, "can you see the detonator control?" "Yes, it's in the command center. 50 meters from my position. 30 Dracthyry between me and it. Can you reach it?" A pause. When Amy spoke again, her voice was calm. "If I go through them instead of around them, yes. But I won't make it without taking hits. A lot of hits. You don't have to do this. We can find another way." "There is no other way, sir. And those people need us now." Another pause. "Tell Kevin I'm sorry I couldn't spar with him again." "Amy," but she was already moving. Velther heard the sounds through the open communication channel. Weapons fire, screaming, the wet sounds of bodies hitting the floor. And through it all, Amy Foster's steady breathing as she pushed, through pain that would have killed any normal being. The transmission filled with chaos. 30 seconds, 40, a minute, then silence. Commander Varax's voice came through the speakers again, but this time it was shaking. "What is this? What are you people?" Amy's voice answered him. She sounded exhausted. She sounded wounded. But she sounded alive. "We're the people who don't quit." A grunt of effort. "Detonator disabled." "Commander, the cells are yours." The champion surged forward with renewed fury. The Dracthyry defenders, already shaken by Amy's impossible assault, broke and fled. Within minutes, the fortress command center was in human hands. Velther found Amy Foster lying against a wall, surrounded by dead Dracthyry. Her body was covered in wounds. Blood pooled beneath her. She should not have been breathing, but she was watching the cell doors open, watching the hostages emerge into freedom. 3,000, she whispered. "We saved 3,000. Kevin Cole appeared, carrying medical supplies despite his own injuries. He knelt beside her and began treating her wounds with surprising gentleness. "You crazy fool," he said softly. "You should have waited for backup. No time." Amy's eyes were closing. "Children were in there, Kevin. I could hear them crying." Velther approached them slowly. His recording implant captured everything, but words seemed insufficient for this moment. "You almost died," he said. "You may still die. For strangers. For people you never met." Amy looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death and dealt too much in return. Yet somehow, there was no regret in them. They were someone's family, she said. Someone's children. Someone's hope. A weak smile crossed her bloody face. "We don't let hope die. Not while we can still fight." Commander Price appeared, his own armor scorched and dented. He looked at Amy, at Kevin, at the freed hostages streaming past them towards safety. 12 champions dead, he reported quietly. 23 seriously wounded. But we did it. We saved them all. Velther looked around at the destruction, at the cost written in blood and sacrifice. He thought about the council chamber, where representatives had debated surrender. He thought about Ambassador Trell's dismissal of 200 human soldiers. "You lost 12% of your force," he said. "That would be considered acceptable losses for most species." Price shook his head. "No loss is acceptable. We remember every name. We carry them with us." He touched his chest, where Velther knew names were tattooed over his heart. "But we do what must be done, because no one else will." The hostages continued to emerge from the cells. Aliens of a dozen species, weak and frightened, but alive. Many of them stopped to stare at their rescuers. These strange beings who had fought and died to save strangers. A small child broke away from the crowd and ran to Amy Foster. Without fear, without hesitation, she threw her arms around the wounded soldier. "Thank you," the child whispered. Amy wrapped her good arm around the tiny alien, holding her close despite the pain it caused. "You're welcome," she said. "You're safe now." Velther recorded the moment. He knew that no matter what else he documented in his career, nothing would ever be more important than this. This was what humanity looked like. This was why the cosmos should fear them. And this was why it should hope. They would always be allies rather than enemies. The Dractari Dominion sued for peace 6 days after the Battle of Weimar Prime. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A force of fewer than 200 humans had destroyed a fleet, broken an army, and freed 3 million hostages. The species that had conquered 100 worlds now begged for mercy. Velther stood before the Galactic Council, his report complete, his testimony ready. The Great Chamber was more crowded than he had ever seen it. Representatives from species who never attended sessions had come to hear his words. Everyone wanted to know the truth about Earth's champions. Historian Koss, High Speaker Mora, said formally, "You were present at the Battle of Weimar Prime. You witnessed the human forces in combat. The Council requests your full account." Velther took a deep breath. He had spent the journey home preparing this moment. He knew that what he said would shape the galaxy's relationship with humanity for generations. "I will share my findings," he began. "But first, I must correct the misunderstanding that brought me to this mission." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Velther continued. "When I boarded the human vessel Relentless Dawn, I believed I was documenting a failure. I thought the humans were foolish, suicidal, perhaps even delusional about their chances against the Dractari. I was wrong." He activated his neural implant, projecting images from his recordings onto the chamber's central display. The Council watched champions tear through Dractari warriors. They saw impossible speed and terrible strength. They witnessed weapons of flesh and bone destroying soldiers who had conquered worlds. "The champions are enhanced humans," Velther explained. "Their bodies have been modified to exceed normal biological limits. They are faster than any species I have encountered, stronger, more durable. A single champion can fight dozens of Dractari warriors and win." Ambassador Trull, who had dismissed the humans so easily before, watched the footage with growing horror on her face. "But their physical abilities are not why the cosmos should fear them." Velther changed the display. Now it showed Amy Foster, wounded beyond reason, pressing through 30 enemies to disable the detonator. It showed Kevin Cole fighting with a broken arm because civilians needed rescue. It showed Marcus Webb dying to protect strangers he had never met. "The Dractari modify their soldiers to remove fear and compassion," Velther said. "They believe this makes warriors stronger. They are wrong. Humans have discovered something the Dractari never understood. Something most species have never grasped." He let the silence build for a moment. "Fear and compassion are not weaknesses. They are fuel. When a human fights for themselves, they have limits. When they fight for someone they love, for a child in danger, for an innocent person who will suffer without them, those limits disappear. They will endure any pain. They will face any enemy. They will die without hesitation if it means saving the person they have sworn to protect." The chamber was utterly silent now. Every representative leaned forward, listening. "The champions are not monsters," Velther continued. "They are weapons forged from love. Every one of them volunteered for a process that killed most candidates. They chose to risk death, to become something more than human, because they could not bear the thought of innocent people suffering while they had the power to help. He thought of his conversations with Commander Daniel Price. The commander was recovering well, though he would carry scars from the battle for the rest of his life. They had spoken at length during the journey home. I asked Commander Price why humans risk everything for strangers, Velther said. He told me something I will never forget. He said that humans cannot ignore suffering, that when they see someone in pain, something inside them demands action, not because they expect reward, not because they want glory, simply because that is what humans are. He deactivated his implant and faced the council directly. You asked me to document human military capability. Here is my conclusion. Do not count their ships. Do not count their soldiers. Do not measure their weapons or their technology. None of that matters. His voice rose, filling the chamber. What matters is this. Humans will sacrifice everything to protect those who cannot protect themselves. They will turn themselves into weapons. They will suffer wounds that would kill other species. They will fight until their bodies fail, and then they will find ways to fight longer. Not for conquest. Not for territory. Not even for survival. For strangers. For children they have never met. For the simple belief that no one deserves to suffer while they have the power to help. He paused, letting his words settle. The Dracthari thought they were the most feared warriors in the galaxy. They were wrong. The galaxy should fear humans, but not because humans are cruel or violent or aggressive. The galaxy should fear humans because there is nothing more dangerous than a species that will burn itself to ash to save a life that is not their own. High Speaker Morath waited for Velther to finish. Then he asked the question everyone was thinking. You speak of fear, but can humanity be trusted? If they are capable of such destruction, are they not a threat to us all? Velther had prepared for this question. He answered without hesitation. Trust them with your children, he said firmly. Trust them with your weakest citizens and your most vulnerable worlds. Because humans do not ask who you are before they save you. They do not weigh the cost before they sacrifice themselves. They simply see suffering, and they act. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives who had once laughed at the idea of human soldiers. But if you threaten innocence, if you make yourself an enemy of the helpless and the weak, then fear them. Fear them more than any force in this galaxy. Because there is no enemy the champions will not fight. There is no cost they will not pay. There is no victory they will not pursue, no matter how impossible it seems. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, High Speaker Morath nodded. Your report is accepted, Historian Koss. The Council will consider your findings. The session dissolved into discussion, but Velther did not stay to listen. He had said everything he needed to say. He walked out of the chamber and found Admiral Lisa Wang waiting for him in the corridor. I watched your testimony, she said. It was well done. It was the truth. Not everyone appreciates truth. She smiled, and this time it was warm rather than terrible. Thank you for coming with us. For seeing what we are, not just what we can do. Thank you for letting me witness it. Velther paused. What happens now? For the champions? We go where we are needed. Wang shrugged as if it were simple. There is always someone who needs help. Someone suffering. Someone crying out for rescue. We answer those calls. That is what we do. Through a nearby viewport, Velther could see a human transport preparing for departure. The surviving champions were aboard, already heading toward their next mission. Already seeking another battle, another people to save, another chance to trade their lives for strangers. Admiral, Velther said slowly, I have spent 60 years studying the galaxy's species. I thought I understood what drives beings to fight. Survival, territory, resources, pride. But your champions fight for none of those things. No, Wang agreed. We fight because it is right. Because we can. Because when we close our eyes at night, we want to know that we made a difference. That somewhere in the galaxy, someone is alive because we chose to act. She turned to leave, then paused and looked back at him. Historian Koss, you asked why the cosmos fears humanity. But I wonder if you found the real answer. I believe I did, Velther said quietly. Oh, what is it? Velther looked at the departing transport, carrying wounded warriors toward the next impossible fight. He thought of Kevin and Amy and Marcus and all the others who had given everything for people they had never met. The cosmos fears you, he said, not because you can destroy worlds, not because you are strong or fast or deadly. The cosmos fears you because you would burn yourselves to ash to save a single life that was not your own. And there is no defense against that kind of love. Admiral Huang smiled one last time. Then she was gone, walking toward her ship. Toward her champions, toward whatever battle waited next. Velther watched her go. And he understood last why the Galactic Council had been afraid. Humanity was not a threat to be contained, that it was a force to be grateful for. And the cosmos would never be the same.